Does this work? Really, Ibrahim, does this work?
It's just a good thing to do with that.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So the last, I think, 2 weeks, we've covered obviously the shurut of salah. We mentioned that istiqbal al-qibla was one of the shurut. I mentioned satr al-awra, and I mentioned tahara, and I mentioned niyyah. We spoke about when can you wipe over something, either it be socks or it can be, your cast or any of those things. So the first thing I mentioned last week was al-khuf, al-khimar. Obviously, khimar is what the women wear on the head. Al-imama, nobody's wearing a head cover. Al-jabira is referring to your cast that I mentioned. So inshallah, today we will just cover this part. Fil mudda sharia. So how many days can you wipe, when it comes to certain things? Al-jabira is ila shifa al-jurh, until it is basically, let's say you had a fracture and you were wiping, right? Once you're cured from this illness, there is no wiping after that. So then you have to obviously cut this open, and then you will wash like how you did. So you're only allowed to wipe until you can actually, until you're cured, then there's no more wiping. So that's one. وَغَيْرُهَا, for example, the other one is, this is referring to when you have an injury. So what about if it's a socks? It's 1 day for a muqim, i.e. a resident, 3 days للمسافر, ثلاثة أيام وبلياليها, 3 days and 3 nights. So when do you start your 3 days and 3 nights is going to be the question. Or let's say even 1 day and 1 night, right? So here there's ikhtilaf how they try to understand this. So let's say you did wudu, you wore the socks. I'm not going to go into the ikhtilaf of we covered that last time, but let's just say you're going to wipe over the socks. So you did wudu, you put on your socks, and so you can obviously, you have a valid wudu, you can still pray with it. Let's say you broke your wudu. Some scholars took the position from here onwards, your 1 day starts. Some of the other scholars will tell you the first time you wipe is when your 1 day starts. So this is where you find the ikhtilaf on when do you take, when you say 1 day and 1 night, the ikhtilaf is from the time you broke your wudu to like when you actually wipe over the socks. Does it sound clear? So it's either from the time you wipe or from the time you broke your wudu. That's when you'll start your 1 day, 1 night, or 3 days and 3 nights for a musafir. So مسح القدر الواجب أكثر ظاهر الخف. So what is the meaning of this is that, how much are you supposed to wipe? Because I've seen, mashallah, some brothers, they start wiping the under of the socks. They do all, it's not washing the feet, it's wiping over the socks. So what is apparent is what you will wipe. So even there's a narration by Ali radiallahu anhu. He mentions that if the deen was from the aql, it was more sensible to wipe under the feet and not on top of the feet. So we base anything we do based on narrations, and the Prophet used to wipe on top of the feet. So this is why. So what is apparent, you don't have to start wiping all over the socks. It's just you wipe with what is apparent. أكثر دوائر العمامة, if you're going to wipe the imama, you'll wipe most of it. For jabira, obviously the cast, you'll wipe all of it. When I say all of it, you don't have to go into like the inches and the like I said, what is apparent from the cast. So this is another one. So just to wrap things up, so in the Hanbali madhab, I'll give you a hypothetical situation. If you cannot, they have a strong position in this, that this is a rukhsa. So if you are going to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so let's say you decide to go gamble and you go somewhere, you actually have to achieve the distance of a traveler. Here they will tell you there's no wiping, i.e. you're going to do something where you're going to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or your trip itself is going to be to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no wiping for you. There is certain usul of every madhab, but this class is not meant for like usul and why they take certain positions. I even mentioned about you cannot steal water and then do wudu because they would consider that invalid. This is not the position of the other madhahib, but for now we'll just tell you that if you're going to do something haram, i.e. your travel itself was something that is not permissible, they will not let you wipe over the socks. Okay, inshallah, moving on. I'm going to say moving on to the next slide because it helps me in the recording. Okay, moving on to the next slide, inshallah. Al-ghusl. So I know we had one of the brothers ask us last time. Ghusl, وَغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ. Okay. وَإِذَا لَمَسْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. So there's two things when you can do ghusl. When do you do it? What are the conditions for you to do it? So I'll start with the shartuhu. Shart is basically the conditions. Al-wudu wa minha an-niyya إذا رفع الحدثين يرتفعان. So if you make a general niyya, we spoke about the hadith إنما الأعمال بالنيات. So let's say you are in a state of major impurity and you just make a niyya for ghusl. You didn't specify is it major or minor purification, then both of them are lifted. If you specified only major, only the major is lifted and you'll have to do wudu again. If you made a general niyyah, then it covers both. But you made a very specific niyyah, and then in, as you said, your niyyah is for, you will get what your niyyah was for. So your lifting is only for al-hadath al-akbar. So that's why when you make a general one, both are lifted. When you make a specific one that is only the major, then you'll get only the major. You'll have to do wudu after that. Same thing, just like wudu, obviously, yeah, this is the one that I was mentioning. So an intent to exit al-hadath al-akbar, once you make that particular intention, that's all you'll get. But if you make an intention to lift both, and both, if you make an intention general, both of them are lifted. So that's the first shart. The other one is when it comes to fard, ta'meem al-badn bil-ma. So what is expected from you when you do ghusl? Every part of your body should be run by water. Every part of your body should be run by water. That means even putting water in your nose. I mean, you goggle and water in your nose. We spoke about madmada and wastanshaqa, i.e. you'll be putting, not gargling, but at least moving the water back and forth in your mouth and pulling the water in your nose and then blowing it out. Wajibuha tasmiyah. As you mentioned, la salata liman lam yudhkar, who does not, there's no wudu. Same thing they consider for the ghusl, that you have to say Bismillah before you do ghusl. Inshallah, is this part clear before we move on? Okay. Unless it's particularly about this one. Overlooked. If you forget, it's overlooked. The wajib is all overlooked. Remember, for even with wudu, let's say you forget to wash 3 times after your night's sleep, or you forget to say Bismillah, it's overlooked. Some of the scholars will make a commentary, say it as soon as you remember. But generally, the commentary is it's overlooked if you forget.
The part of me specific versus general. So how do you make a general?
So let's say you're in a state of major impurity and your niyyah is to do ghusl. So this is a general intention, and then both of them are lifted. If you make an intention, I am going to do ghusl for major impurity, then that's all you will get. Yeah.
Just to be clear, when you take a shower and you make the intention to make wudu, for example, you don't need to do the actions.
Repeat the question
You
again.
don't have to do the actions of wudu while in the shower. As long as you
For ghusl?
for in general, well, ghusl or no, not ghusl, just say wudu.
What do you mean by actions? Like dalk?
Like the traditional
Washing? Yeah.
wudu,
Yeah, so that one, inshallah, we'll come to that one. The dalk part will come. Okay, sunanuhu ghaslul kaffayn thalathan. So if you want to actually follow the sunnah way, you'll start with washing your hands 3 times. First one, ghaslu ma talawwathu. So obviously anything that's impure in your body, you'll wash that. You'll wash your hands 3 times. Al-wudu qabla. So doing wudu is again, so when I say wudu, you will not wash your feet. So let's say you washed all your parts that was soiled, and then after that, let's say you washed your hands, and then you start doing wudu. Let's say you wiped your head, but you'll not go to your feet. That's when you will say yataman. This you will start with basically your right side, then you'll go to your left side. Dalk is basically scrubbing. Scrubbing itself, even for wudu, only the Imam Malik is strict on this. He puts it as a condition that you have to basically rubbing basically, if you see. All the other imams don't put this as a condition. For the ghusl itself, it's considered a sunnah. I.e., if you just say you just put water all across your body, you don't actually scrub, it's a sunnah. Is that clear? Okay. And so basically do this 3 times is again a sunnah. غسل القدمين في مكان آخر, to wash your feet in another place, is a sunnah also. So let me repeat it again. So let's say any part of your body that is soiled, you clean, wash your hands, then you start doing wudu, like except once you wipe, let's say you wash your head, after that you'll start with right, left, and then I'll be scrubbing. I'm assuming you're scrubbing. You won't wash your feet. Washing the feet is the last thing you will do. It is the last thing you will do when you do ghusl. And in another place would be sunnah. Obviously nowadays I don't think so anybody's trying to do it, but one of the things the Prophet ﷺ used to wash his feet in another place. Is that clear? Okay. Basically making yes.
So now we use like shampoo and soap, right? So that's considered scrubbing, right?
So scrubbing not necessarily with shampoo itself. Remember, ghusl, all you need is water.
No, it is, but I'm saying general practice now is using those things, right? So using those is considered equivalent to scrubbing, meaning you are rubbing yourself.
Yes, no, I'm just talking about generally. So when you do wudu, you are also
not wudu, but I'm saying for the shower.
But so one is ghusl itself does not require you to, let's say you just did this, that would be considered scrubbing itself.
No.
So obviously using shampoo or soap, all that is part of cleanliness, but the bare minimum for ghusl itself is just dalk is a sunnah. That is any sort of scrubs or wiping that you do in your wudu also. Only Imam Malik has a strict condition that you have to do it. All the other imam for wudu itself, they don't have that as a condition. Okay, inshallah, moving on to the next slide. فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. So there's an ayah in the Quran, if you do not find water, فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. So you're allowed to use, basically you're allowed to do tayammum, but it has to be clean soil. It can be, so what is meant by soil is, so obviously dry sand where there is dust. If it is wet or anything of that sort, we don't consider that. Some scholars will allow touching the wall, but generally they will tell you soil where there's dust. I think anywhere nowadays you go outside, typically you do find some sort of soil and dust. So what is the difference between tayammum and tayammum itself? I'll tell you the Hanbali position. This is basically, it allows you to do wudu, but it's not lifting your state of impurity. So let's say you don't have water and you're in a state of minor impurity. What tayammum does, it's allowing you to pray, but it's not lifting your state of minor impurity. It's only giving you permission to pray when you do the tayammum, but it's not changing your state from minor impurity to pure itself. You're not in a state of you're not tuhur, you're not in a state of purification. So it only gives you permission to pray. And this is obviously the Hanbali position. Some scholars, they will tell you, no, you're actually changed. We'll stick to one for now.
That means that I try to develop the mushaf, I can.
So, okay, that's a very, very specific thing. Inshallah, we'll cover that one. With mushaf, it's a little controversial. I'll mention that, inshallah. Mashul wajh. So, furud, mashul wajh. So, the first thing, the Prophet ﷺ what he used to do was in ضرب يديه على الأرض في الأرض. He would hit his hands on the earth, ومسح فمسح. Then he would wipe his face and the hands, so up to the wrist. So i.e., if you were to start mashul wajh, so first you strike your 2 hands on the earth, on the soil. And then obviously you can, the soil itself doesn't have to be sticking on your hands. And then after that, you'll wipe across the whole thing. And then you go immediately to the hands up to the wrist. Now, it is allowed, let's say after the wipe of the face, you can again strike your hand and then do your hands. It is allowed to do that also. So if you were to do it in order, you'll start with this one, mashul wajh. You'll start with wiping the face. Mashul kaffain, you'll start wiping the hands. Tartiban muwala, you have to do it in order. So the other madhahib, what they will increase sometimes is they will maybe flip the order, or sometimes one of the positions of the Maliki madhab is they'll start from here to they will consider the whole hand as part of tayammum and not just the wrist itself. But at least you are following one narration. If you hit the earth, wipe the face and wipe the hands, you've done tayammum.
So for the rest of the three, up to the rest, not
That is a Maliki position.
this one.
So Malikis will allow you to do it even with stone. Okay. So wajibhu, again, tasmiyah, to mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shurutuhu. So when can you actually do tayammum? Adzul ma walam tajidu ma'an. One of the conditions that's mentioned in the Quran itself, that you don't find water. This is the first one. If you don't have water here, you will exhaust all your resources to find water. And then if you don't have the capability, only then you will do tayammum. So the first one is you don't have the capability to find water. There's two things. One is kulliya, I mean completely. That means you don't have water at all, or little, but it's not enough. So let's say if you drink this water, use this water, you could die of thirst. I'm just giving a situation. So let's say you are traveling on a boat, you need this water to drink. And if you use that, you won't be able to do, obviously in the sea, you have seawater. But I'm just giving you a situation. So in that case, again, yeah, camping is a good example. Let's say you use that water. In that case, you can actually see, you don't have an option. Like if you use it, you will not have water itself. So dukhul al-waqt is a condition. You cannot do your tayammum for dhuhr time, and then salat al-asr comes in, and then you're like, oh, I did tayammum at that point of time. So anytime you do tayammum, let's say for salat al-dhuhr and asr comes in, you'll do tayammum again. So it has to be for. And why are you doing tayammum? Tayammum lima yatayammamu anhu, i.e. if you're doing it for hadath al-akbar, so obviously you're lifting the state. You're doing tayammum to get this out of the state of major impurity for you to pray, or is it minor impurity or najasa bil batn, or even if you have body impurities, any sort of impurity that you have. But remember, you can only do this if you do not have access to water. The other one is why, again, this is a slightly of a Hanbali position, fard and nafl. If you made tayammum for nafl, you cannot pray with that for fard. This is a Hanbali position. If you made tayammum for fard, then that's what you've intended for. So you have to be very specific with why you're making tayammum. So you cannot go from lower to higher, but from higher to lower, usually the Hanbalis will be strict on this. So i.e. if you made tayammum for the fard, that's what you pray. But let's say you made tayammum for nafl to fard, you cannot, if you made tayammum, let's say for sunnah or something, you cannot use that to pray the fard prayer, but you can go from higher to lower.
I don't understand the higher lower.
So let's say you made tayammum for salat al-dhuhr. So you prayed dhuhr. Here the Hanbalis are strict, but they'll say that's it. But the other madhahib, they will allow you to pray, let's say sunan or something. But once your time expires, the Hanbalis are very strict that you have to make tayammum for every prayer. So let's say you prayed dhuhr, the time expired, now you will have to make another tayammum specifically for asr.
The Zohar, for example, has sunnah before it, after it. So you just make one, you're making a niyyah for making Zohar.
Other madhahib will allow this, but the Hanbalis won't allow you to do it.
Meaning you're only supposed to pray.
Well, no, you can make tayammum again and then do your sunnah. But the other madhahib, they usually allow you to go from higher to lower. That is from fard. But if you made a tayammum for nafl, they won't allow you to do it. So hopefully this is clear. Mubtalat, same thing, i.e. the nullifiers, whatever is a nullifier for wudu is a nullifier for tayammum. Same like, so wujudul ma, anytime you find water, then this nullifies it. Khuruj al-waqt, as I mentioned, once we leave from salat al-dhuhr, if you go to salat al-asr, your time, that means you have to make tayammum again. Then anything, the nullifier of wudu is also a nullifier for tayammum. All right, I think this is pretty clear. All right, moving on to the next slide. al-hadath al-akbar. Al-hadath al-akbar is basically being in a state of minor impurity.
You said akbar.
Oh, I said, oh, sorry, asghar, my bad. Nawaqid al-wudu. So the nullifiers of wudu. So you need to understand what is actually nullifiers. Anything that comes out of the two exits is a nullifier of wudu. Al-kharij al-nadas al-kathir min ghayri sabilain. So anything that, any sort of impurity that comes, let's say, from your body, other than the two exits. What is the meaning of, let's say, when you bleed, sometimes you bleed pus that comes out of your body, sometimes it's pus. So that is considered, if it's a lot, al-kathir, it would be considered a nullifier. Even when you bleed, if you bleed a lot, is a nullifier wudu. So blood is considered impure. In general, pus also is considered impure. So if you have a lot of it, it's a nullifier of wudu. So this is one. The other one is zawal al-aql. When you lose your senses, illa yasir, no min qa'im wa qa'id. Have you seen this for Jum'ah? I mean, I've seen this a lot. The people basically do this. This is okay, it's fine. This is something small. Yasir is overlooked. But when someone starts snoring, it's a nullifier of wudu. At that point, you know his person is, at least he doesn't know what's actually happening around him. Sometimes people are even closing their eyes, but if you ask him what he heard in the khutbah, he will even tell you what he heard. He's aware of his surroundings, but maybe his eyes are closed. So that's why when they say yasir, there's no problem. But anytime you're deep asleep, you have to go do wudu again. So renewal of wudu is aklu lahm al-juzur. This is purely a Hanbali position. I'll just mention this. There's two narrations. La wudu'a mimma massat an-nar. There is no wudu for something that touches the fire. And there's another narration where the Prophet ﷺ had told for them whoever ate the meat of the camel to do wudu. So there's two narrations. So anybody, there's questions, there's a concept of nasikh and mansukh even in hadith, i.e. abrogation. The Hanbalis took the position, no, it's not abrogated. We do not know when these two hadith were revealed, and we're not even sure what was the meaning. So this ikhtilaf, the Hanbalis took a position, anytime you eat camel meat, this is why you have this, you have to go renew your wudu. The others took the other hadith, that is, as long as it is cooked, and this is an abrogated, the hadith that is abrogating the previous hadith. So they said, no, camel meat is not an nawaqid of wudu, that is, it is not a nullifier of wudu. This is why the ikhtilaf is between the Hanbalis and the non-Hanbalis.
So what is cooked?
So let's say the position for the others is like, generally they consider the hadith abrogated, generally. The other one is, they say that if it is cooked itself, they don't consider, because they say la wudu, there is no wudu if it is, basically mimma masatina, from what has touched the fire, which if it is cooked, they don't consider this to be a nullifier of wudu itself.
When is the case that it is not cooked?
I mean, I think generally we cook.
Right.
So that's why they, yeah, fruits, I guess, yeah. With meat,
So this is not specific to the meat.
this is referring to camel meat. I mean, the others, they don't consider, this is specifically for camel itself. The others you can eat, no problem.
I have heard like fish. There are certain fish that they do something to it that you don't have to cook, but they put something on it and it's they eat it. Yeah.
Yeah, but fish, there is no, all the madhab except like some of the Hanaf on specific sea creatures, they make some exceptions. But generally, other than crocodile, let's say something that hunts, that's where they will tell you, no, this is not something you can eat. But let's say general fish, or I don't want to go into crab, but but anything that generally you can think of in terms of fishes, there are people. Okay. I'll mention this part, these two. Mashul farj, touching the private, so touching either the front or the back. So i.e. you have to touch the inside of your back or the front part. So the Hanaf don't consider this, actually the Hanafis don't consider this. The Hanbalis are more strict on this, i.e. why is because there is a narration, the Hanafis considered more strong, that if you touch your private, there is a hadith that it is only part of your body, and they consider this more strong. The others that take the position that there's the other narration, the Hanafis reject that hadith. They say it is not a strong hadith. So that's why the ikhtilaf in terms of when you touch your private, especially the front, they consider that a nullifier of wudu. So this ikhtilaf is more on like which they accept or which they don't accept. Hanaf don't consider the first hadith. Obviously, in our day and time, Sheikh Albani also took the position that it is only a part of your body. But this is where the ikhtilaf is. The Hanbalis, if you, let's say, since this is a Hanbali class, that would be considered a nullifier of wudu. The Hanafis are a little bit more lenient on this position.
The other hadiths that now do not
Accept it. They don't consider this a strong hadith. That's why the ikhtilaf is there. They don't consider this a strong hadith. I mean, so I guess they consider it da'if if you want to call it. But I have to check what is your official position. That's why the ikhtilaf is. They acknowledge the hadith itself, the narration is there. But sometimes the ikhtilaf, sometimes maybe do we consider this an authentic hadith or not authentic hadith? That's where the ikhtilaf is. Mashu rajl.
It's bil yad, not
Yeah, bil yad.
yes, that's
So, and not the front part also. There's a little bit detail on that one, but for now, let's say front part of your hands. Mashu rajul bi shahwa. So let's say if a man is touching another, obviously the other gender with shahwa, with desire, the Shafi'is are the most strictest. The Hanbalis, the Shafi'is, if you touch, then your wudu is nullified. The Hanbalis, if you touch with desire, that's when your wudu is nullified. The Hanaf are the most lenient, unless and until some liquid is obviously existed from your body, only then it would be considered a nullifier of wudu. So the Hanbalis, if you touch with desire, it's a nullifier of wudu. The Shafi'is are the most strictest. I had a friend of mine who studied Shafi'i fiqh. He was telling me it's very difficult to follow his opinion, but especially if you're doing Umrah or Hajj, I don't know what the position at that point. I don't know how practical it might be to follow that position. And the last part, غسل الميت ينقض به وضوء الغسل فقط. So the one who's actually he doesn't have to do ghusl, but it would be considered a nullifier for he has to do wudu again. And ghusl is recommended in this case. A ridda is somebody who leaves Islam, and obviously at that point he doesn't have wudu. Salah ma yuhramu al-muhdith. So what is prohibited when somebody is in a state of minor impurity? As-salah, you can do salah. At-tawaf. So anybody, obviously anybody who's done Hajj and Umrah, wudu is a condition for you to do tawaf. All the other things you can do it, but tawaf you can't do it. And mash al-mushaf, touching the mushaf in a state of minor impurity, this is a Hanbali position. Even the Hanaf follows this position. You're not supposed to touch the mushaf. Even I was looking at the other position when you're in a state of hayd, yani your cycle, you can touch the mushaf. So the ones who actually allow it, they will tell you use let's say interpretation. I mean tafsir book, because tafsir books also have ayat, but the kalam of the people are more. The one who's writing the tafsir, his kalam is more. That's when they will say, okay, in this case, use like an English translation or a tafsir, because there's words of man is way more than the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the mushaf in and of itself, that's where a lot of the madhahib are very, very strict when it comes to touching the mushaf, especially in a state of, let's say, hayd, or in a state of minor impurity. Also, they're strict on this, even reciting the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
even when they are teaching.
So that's what this is. The ones who allow leniency, they will tell you, ask them to use like a tafsir book or a English translation. This is where some of the scholars will take a lenient approach to, because it's going to be very hard for somebody to, let's say if somebody's a Quran teacher, it's going to be extremely difficult. So in this case, they will ask somebody to use, let's say, a translation where, like, obviously there's Arabic, but they will also have lots of, there's the kalam of the people are more than the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the traditional position that you're not supposed to touch the mushaf.
No exceptions. Gloves.
Hmm?
Gloves.
I-
I've seen someone say
Yes, yes. Dr. Hatim's position is that is also Dr. Hatim's position, to wear gloves and touch the mushaf. That is one of the exceptions also they give you. Phones, another one, they tell you just use a phone nowadays.
Let's say, for example, you're doing da'wah in like the Arab country that's like some Christians, some Muslims, and you're doing da'wah, and like one of them wants a mushaf to like go and read it, you can't give it.
No, and I mean, then you'll never give a mushaf.
Okay, make it, that's not even an exception.
Yeah, those you're talking about like
These are-
scenarios, but we're talking about in general. Yeah.
So what then happens position to use the glove? So that means like use cloth, use something.
Yeah, don't touch it directly.
that-
Because this was specifically asked during one of the classes, and he said, there's workarounds. Wear something in your hand so you don't touch it directly or anything of that sort.
It's based on the ayah, right?
Yeah, وَلَا تَمَسُّونَ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ. Then none of them should touch it except the ones who are pure. The ones who allow it, they say this is referring to the malaika.
That's right.
Yes, the ones who do not take that position say this is referring to the malaika and not referring to, let's say, humans. But the ones who say no, it has to be the ones who are actually, the traditional positions are pretty strict on this. The ones who allow it, even among the classical opinions, they will say this is referring to the malaika and not referring to humans. That's where the ikhtilaf of the ayah itself, you will find this in any of the tafsir books. Okay, al-hadath al-akbar. Okay, inshallah. Here they pray 9:15, right?
Yes.
All right, I'll try to finish it maybe in 5 minutes. Al-hadath al-akbar. When, so mujibat al-ghusl, my major impurities, mujibat al-ghusl is when are you obligated to do ghusl? And the other one is ma yahrum ala al-muhdith, what is prohibited upon the one who's in a state of major impurity. So the first part, خروج المني يعني باللذة إلا النائم فلا يشترط فيه الدفق. Okay, the first one is when mani is the white liquid, i.e., so when that comes out, the white liquid itself, that is when you're obligated to do wudu. Ghusl, my bad. So even the second one is intiqal manni bil ladha, when it actually moves even within your body, even if it doesn't come out, you have to do ghusl also. Two things. So anytime it comes out the white liquid, or if it moves within your body, obviously with desire, some people may have medical issues, that's a different thing. So if it moves within your body with desire, or if it actually comes out itself, even if it's in your state of sleep, then you'll do ghusl. So let's say if you're in doubt and you see your clothes are soiled, then you will do it out of precaution. So anytime you see your clothes and it's soiled and you're not sure, is it water? In that case, you will do wudu out of precaution. And anytime it moves. Obviously, if you have intercourse, either anything comes out or it doesn't come. In this case, you will have to do ghusl. Islamul kafir, and if somebody becomes Muslim, he has to do ghusl again. Al-maut, this is obviously referring to the janazah itself. When you do ghusl for the one who passes away. Intiqal al-dam, then again your menses and your postpartum. So when somebody gives birth, it can go up to 40 days max, or if somebody's basically going through their monthly cycle. These are the ones where you have to do يسألونك عن الحيض قل هي يسألونك عن الحيض. The ayah is not coming to my mind, but they're asking about the hayd. Do not approach them except when they're in. The ayah is not coming to my mind. It's from Surah Al-Baqarah. Maybe somebody can help me. وما يحرم على المحدث الحدث الأكبر. So what are you prohibited from doing when you are in a state of major impurity? We mentioned about recitation of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Labthu fil masjid, i.e. staying in the masjid. ما يحرم على المحدث, anything that somebody who's in a state of minor impurity, same thing. So it's two specific things. Recitation of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the other one specifically is staying in the masjid. So if you're doing i'tikaf, obviously somebody could have a wet dream. In this case, he has to immediately try to leave and be in a state of major impurity. So Ibn Taymiyyah, he took a position. Obviously he's a Hanbali. Ibn Taymiyyah always has unique positions. He will allow you to stay in the masjid if you actually do wudu, and then you can stay in the masjid. So this is a lenient approach that he took. But generally, if you're in a state of major impurity, so if somebody's in their monthly cycles, traditionally, all the madhahib will tell you the person should not enter the masjid. We're not talking about the center, like how we have today. It's a school and it's everything. Let's say the masjid, the prayer area itself, they should not enter. So I know in Muslim countries sometimes they have like an area they don't have to go inside the masjid also. I think in Egypt also they have this, if not all, some. So you don't have to go inside itself, the prayer area. I'm sure, I think we also have it here. We don't have to necessarily go inside the masjid itself. So you shouldn't, traditionally all the madhahib, will not allow somebody, or it's not permissible for that person to enter the masjid if they're in a state of obviously major impurity for men, and same thing for the women if they're in their cycles or like their postpartum. They shouldn't. Why am I saying this specifically? Because I know people, especially during the month of Ramadan, a lot of people volunteer, and one of the brothers had actually asked me, is my wife allowed to come during? And that's what I had to tell him. Traditionally, this is the position of the four madhab. You may always find leniency here and there, but all the traditional schools will all prohibit a lady from entering the masjid if she's in her cycle. Hopefully, yes.
You say Quran recitation, you mean like holding the Quran, you're saying?
No, just reciting it itself.
Even like practicing those.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
This is a pure, obviously this is this is a Hanbali position. You may find some ikhtilaf, or they will allow you to do dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Taymiyyah again, or al-Mazini is one other scholar also. There's leniency with some of the other scholars, especially if somebody is a hafiz, let's say she's somebody who memorizes the Quran a lot. The scholars, you find opinions that actually allow you, but like I said, traditionally they would either it be touching or reciting. They don't allow this because of the ayah that we generally mention. But with recitation, you may find leniency, but when it comes to touching the mushaf, it's more strict. So you can wear gloves, as we mentioned. When we're talking about minor impurity, major, it gets you more strict. Should we stop here? Because I know. Yeah, so this is a new section. It's Tima'ul Kharij min Faraj al-Mar'a, referring to obviously the different the cycle, postpartum, the menses, istihada, different types of blood. How do you know which one is? I just want to mention one thing. So inshallah, because one of the brothers, they keep, before we go into the next one. So if somebody's having what is the name, brother Zaki? Some people, when they leak urine all the time, it's called dribbling, I think.
Yeah.
There's a specific term they use. So if somebody has this problem, in most of the Hanbali books, you have this. They explain this because obviously for this person to be washing his clothes every single, what especially the traditional Hanbali position is washing it 7 times, as I mentioned. So even them, they will tell you anybody who has this problem. It can even not only be with urine, it can be with hail, like somebody's bleeding constantly. Like she knows that her cycle is only 6 days or 5 days, but she's bleeding for the next 15 days or something. In all of these cases where they have a medical problem, or even somebody has a urinary problem, in all of these cases, what scholars will generally tell you is do wudu for every salah. So I had even asked this during Hajj, because people have this problem. I know I did some research, and there's a decent amount of people that actually have this problem of basically when they urinate, it doesn't stop. So people with these kind of medical conditions, and the scholars will generally tell you this person should do wudu for every salah.
Some people will say it happens to them during salah.
I mean, is it like a medical problem, or is it just a waswasa? That's why you got to differentiate. So if it's a waswasa, you see, you will judge with what is apparent. You know if there's a medical problem in you. Generally, if you know, basically, if you're done with urination, if it's not stopping, you know you have a medical problem. Because you have no control of your bladder. But if you're talking about, say, oh, I'm not sure if my thing is, then you're talking about you're not sure. You're just a fun. You're thinking, unless you feel, in that case, you'll not assume. So you have to differentiate between waswasa and somebody who actually has a condition itself. So it goes both, because the Prophet a lady had asked the Prophet about her condition when she would actually have bleeding throughout, and then she was told to basically do wudu for every salah. So same thing, when somebody has a urinary problem, he will do wudu for every single salah. That's it. You don't have to. I know another question popped up. They were saying, what about the nafl? So it's for the time span itself. So let's say you didn't break your wudu in that time span, then you can use it. Once the next time starts in, go do your wudu again. So that's what you'll have to. If somebody has, by the way, this is a big number. It's just that we're not aware of.
A word of people having, urinary discharge or something, doing sneezing as well, some people like that. And in the previous slide, it talks about shak, so.
Yeah.
So impurity is not based on shak.
Yeah. So you build upon yaqeen. I think this is something was in the previous slide.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. ما شك من في الطهارة أو الحدث بنى على اليقين. So you will build on what you're sure of. So let's say you're a, I'll give you an example. The only ones that actually allow this, or they say if you're in shak, go do wudu, or the Malikis. Hopefully not if you guys are Malikis. So let's say you're sure you have wudu, then you will go with what you're sure of, but you're not sure if you broke the wudu, then you will build it upon the yaqeen. Yani bana ala al-yaqeen, you will go with what you're sure of. Because if you entertain this, you'll be doing wudu almost, So I'm not talking about the one who's going to do wudu for every salah because he thinks this is a sunnah. I'm talking about somebody who he's like, oh, did I break it? This is what, you will go with what you're sure of, and then you will leave the doubt.
But you also see some people making a bowl. They will like wash it, they go back, wash it again. And after they go back and wash it again. Like, it's this constant, okay, I think I missed some parts.
Yeah, I'll answer the question. Inshallah, I'll stop the recording. But okay, regarding that, the question that you're asking, right? So that is waswasa. I have seen it myself, and